Cool. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Riley Warren. I'm joined here by my co-host Shannon Jacobs, and we are super excited to present to you for the first time ever the Dream Job Podcast. The Dream Job Podcast, and we're here with our first ever guest, Professor of Percussion at Texas A&M University-Commerce, Dr. Brian Zator. Hello, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank y'all so much for having me, and I'm honored to be the first guest. So it's all like downhill from here,
yes.
You know. So actually, I think it's all uphill from here. So
uphill.
everything is going to keep getting better. So sorry you had to like scrape the bottom of the barrel to get me.
No, not of course, yeah. No, there's only like several dance recitals and piano recitals we're missing on this Sunday to be here with you. But we wanted to make sure we put you a priority above everybody else. So no, we're happy that you're here, and we're excited that you're our first guest. And you've been someone who's very connected to the Forney Percussion Program and Forney ISD Percussion for many years. So I think it only makes sense that you are the first guest on the podcast.
Well, knowing, with the North Texas Percussion Festival, and then when Mario Luna was here, and then you for the past 6 years?
Going on year 7, yeah.
Year 7, yeah. So just to see what you guys have done, and Shannon, you've been here for
since the dinosaurs.
Since the dinosaurs. So and I was here with you, I guess. So
the Jurassic era, to be more specific. But.
So yeah. But just to see what you guys have been able to do with the program too, and for me to be just a small part of that, just really excited for y'all and what y'all have been doing for each other, and for really most importantly for the kids.
Yeah,
I think it's really cool.
Well, thank you so much. Well,
thank you.
I think in addition to that, a little bit more about the podcast. I mean, we're here because we all love our jobs. We all, at one point, decided I want to be a percussion director in some form or fashion. And so I think it's really important to just provide a space for, people like us and people like you to talk about that, and just really continue to find ways to be inspired, and just hear from you. I'm super excited to hear from you on just what you're passionate about. You obviously wear a lot of different hats, and so just kind of hearing a little bit more about your journey, but also just to kind of let everyone who's listening know our specific journeys and what makes us excited to come back every day and do this job.
Absolutely.
So let's jump right in, Dr. Zator. I think the best way to start most of these interviews is just to hear a little bit about your journey in percussion. So if you could just kind of take us through, you can go, I've spoken with you in the past about some of your awesome things you got to do in middle school. So maybe that's a good place to start, or maybe there's even an earlier instance that would be, a good place for you to kind of start talking about what led you here.
Yeah. So, kind of middle school, I had a very unique experience in middle school, and it was pretty incredible too. So I grew up in North Houston, went to Hildebrandt Intermediate, was where I started, and then went to Klein Oak High School, all in it's in the Klein district in the Spring, North Houston area. And in middle school, I had no musical experience before 6th grade.
Oh, wow.
And my older sister, she did band. She was like, Brian, the cool kids play trumpet and percussion. And I was like, well...
Still true today, except for trumpet.
Nice. So, I didn't really consider myself a real cool kid, so I needed all the help I could get. So I was like, well, let me try it for either of those.
Right.
And so I tried trumpet, and the band director was like, well, will you ever have braces? Yes. Okay, here's 2 sticks, and let's try that. And so they did the whole beginner test and everything. So I got put in there, and from there, basically, it was just ready, set, go. In 7th grade, I made the top orchestra, and we were the middle school honor orchestra that went to TAMU-C my 7th grade year.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I was also in the top middle school band in 7th grade, and we won middle school band honor band. So we got to go back my 8th grade year.
Oh my gosh.
So this is like mid 80s that I got to go to TAMU-C 7th and 8th grade year.
Wow.
Perform in Lilo Cockrell Theater for the honor band and honor orchestra.
That's
And
incredible.
so my instructors also, especially percussion instructors, Greg Reinhardt and Lamar Burkhalter, I took lessons from these guys. I mean, these were some of the people, like percussion directors now owe so much of what they're doing today to Greg Reinhardt and Lamar Burkhalter.
Wow.
So they were like the kind of the forefathers of high school, middle school percussion directors. And so they came and they did sectionals and lessons and all that stuff. So that was my middle school. And I didn't know anything else. It was awesome. And
Yeah.
so I did that, then went to high school, and I just kind of kept doing it. I was in the top groups. I mean, I was a pretty good player back then, and so I enjoyed it. I had a lot of really good friends in
Right.
high school, and but I never thought about doing music as a career. And so I was actually accepted to go to UT and A&M College Station to be an engineer major.
Wow.
And I had
Interesting.
accepted both of them. And, well, I had been admitted, and I had made the decision to go to A&M College Station to do engineering. And this was like February, March of my senior year of high school. And so I went and saw a band concert at A&M, and it was good, but it was like, man, I don't know if that's the last kind of experience that I want with music. And so I ended up, I was like, maybe this music thing. I talked to some of my band directors, Robert Hastings and Steve Tallick were a couple of my guys, Robert Hastings especially, Monty Mast, who was was with Cavaliers, Phantom Regiment, and so they were like, well, this music thing could be something you could do. So, and just an amazing opportunity. Anybody that marches drum corps, you have that connection, and I was one of 8 in the front ensemble, and most of them, I still follow them. Actually, no, all of them. We still follow each other on, social media, and sometimes at TAMU-C we still get together. So that was such a special group that we really, and with Eric and Brian, those guys. Eric Johnson is the, founder and CEO of Innovative Percussion.
Right.
Yeah.
And we would just try different mallets. He would wrap them the night before, come in and say, hey, try these. Okay, cool. So it was pretty cool.
awesome.
And then I played in a master class. Keiko Abe was one of our guest artists at Baylor, and I played went in the Bainbridge Grove for her. And it ended up somehow, some way that I got the opportunity to study with her. And so I had just her and I were talking, and she was like, oh yeah, sure, I'd love to take you on as a student. I was like, wait, what? So, and then I talked to Dr. V, and he had sent over 2 other students 25 years prior to that to Japan to study with Keiko.
Yeah.
And so I asked Keiko, and via her secretary, and back then it was all faxes, because email had just begun. And so ended up, I was able to go to Japan to study with Keiko Abe, and lived there for 8 months. Studied, practiced marimba 5 to 6 hours a day for 8 months.
Wow.
Traveled a lot, so there were some days I didn't practice.
What part of Japan?
Just outside Tokyo.
Okay, cool.
So she taught at a school, Toho Gakuen School of Music. And so, and I was there with, undergrads and then graduate students, and I was a international student. I was just there and performed. Like, she put together a quartet and her as the soloist that I was a part of.
Nice.
And so we traveled around, I think it did like 7 concerts with her all around Japan.
Wow.
And
In that 8 months.
In that 8 months.
That's incredible.
So
this is while you're in college.
I graduated
just
from Baylor.
graduated,
Just
okay.
graduated. 98 is when I graduated, and then October is when I flew out there and lived there. It was a kind of a student apartment. Basically, kind of put these 2 long tables together, and that was about the size of my apartment for 8 months. So yeah, it was. I mean, definitely, obviously, a culture shock
For sure.
but just an amazing, life-changing experience.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
did you have to do a lot of like prep in terms of like learning the language and learning about the culture before you went there, or did you just go in head first?
I tried to learn some of the
Yeah.
language, but it's hard. So
Yeah, it's very different.
It's very different. I mean, now you have like Babbel, You know,
Yeah,
you didn't have
Duolingo.
that. You didn't have that back
We are
then.
not sponsored by Duolingo,
Or Babel.
but we will accept sponsorships.
Yeah, any form.
So for the non-sponsorships of any of those things,
Yes.
I wasn't involved with any of that. So, I mean, they were like literally books on cassette tapes, or like language types things, and I would do a little bit of that. So I knew some phrases, and a little bit of the culture. So I started to learn a little bit about that, and I learned 2 marimba solos, Herb marimba solos, wind sketch and tambourine paraphrase. I had just learned probably like 4 or 5 months before I left to go to Japan. I learned traditional grip, 4-mount traditional grip, and so I did all of that. Went over there and jumped right in.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What are some things that make that's a pretty unique experience? And there's many marimbas in the world who would like, wow, what an opportunity! What would I have gotten out of that? What are some of the things that stick out in your mind that were different from being around other marimba players, other artists, and then spend that time with Keiko?
People have asked me that question before, and I think one of the things that, and especially now that I've been teaching over 2 decades, and the things I see about what I'm doing compared to what I hear other people are doing, teaching here in the U.S. and what my experience was, especially with drum corps, and then going to Japan, I think there's such a difference that Keiko has between technique and playing music. And in my mind, my philosophy is let's have a very strong foundation of technique. So then if your technique is as high as it can go, then you can play as high a level of music as you can do. And so when I was there though, she never said anything about my hands. About, okay, when you're holding the mallets, you need to put your index finger here. You need to have a backward C. Watch the back 3 fingers in the fulcrum point. Never. There was actually, I still remember this so vividly, where I was playing the end of Wind in the Banbury Grove, and I had relearned it with traditional grip to play for her. And it's this big run, it's jigga-jigga-jigga-jigga-jigga-jigga-dum. And every time my fingers kept slipping on the mallets, and I would almost drop the mallets. And I remember Abe-sensei, I keep playing this and my hand just keeps slipping. Is there anything that you can help me with? And she kind of looked at me. She was like, I don't know, just figure it out. Oh my gosh. I'm like, you're like the best marimba player in the entire world.
Right.
And you're just telling me to figure it out? Now, I did not say that to her.
Right.
But in my mind, I'm thinking, but then as I continued on, I was like, that's at this level, that's not her job.
Right.
Like, I should just be figuring it out. And so I did. And so in my 5 to 6 hours of practicing, I would probably practice an hour and a half of technique. And I would use all of my cavalier warm-ups, other warm-ups that I had done just kind of on my own, and then just developed my own way of practicing technique. And so my technique got pretty good, in a short amount of time, because I focused on that. But the difference is, and we did there was a marimba technique class that I took from her, but it was almost like more of here's some exercises you can do. And I don't remember all of them, but these are exercises. But she never ever said anything about put your fulcrum here, watch your back fulcrum. She didn't say anything that. So it was more of here's timing, here's knowing where the beat is so you can improvise.
Yeah.
And then you can always know where the pulse is. So that's what I got from that. And so it's always, okay, how do I balance, me as a teacher and a performer, how do I balance the technique with the performance? I can't go so far with the technique and let the music part of it go. Also the performance presence aspect. To watch her play, and this was the late 90s, and so I mean she was still performing a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
And to watch her play and how much passion she had. I remember I did a lesson with Time for Marimba, and I was playing it, and it was very mechanical. And she was like, no. And she just kind of stood there behind the marimba, and she just started moving her arms. And the sound just kind of emerged from the motion. And it blew my mind. I was like, that's what it is. That's
Right.
what it's about. It's not about, am I playing all 6 of these notes in 5-lets? It's, are we creating this warmth of sound where you don't hear any individual note, you hear this ambiance of sound. because that's what Minoru Miki wanted with the composition.
Yeah.
So that's what I got out of that. And I think that's something that I try to do. I don't always succeed at it, but trying to go even farther with what is this music about? And how do I perform it in a way that will connect me to an audience member? I think that's something that I feel really, that I got so much out of it.
I think hearing that perspective is so cool because I think we all go into our daily jobs like wanting to bring that out of students, but we so often get hammered down by, oh, the thumb has got to be here, the hand's got to look like this, the wrist orientations, because we know, especially in Texas, like uniformity of technique is so big, and that's not to say that that's not important, but I feel like a lot of people just sometimes get discouraged by that, and we forget about those, really special moments like the one you're describing, where it's like, oh, we didn't even talk about technique, we just talked about how she moved and how that like made me feel something, that like brought the music out in a new way. And so I think, what's your opinion on that? Like, what would you say to the typical high school band director who gets so bogged down and, oh, the technique's got to be perfect and it's got to be clean, it's got to be with a metronome? How do you encourage those directors to think more about the musicality and what they're teaching their kids?
Well, I think it's a balance. So because those things, you need uniformity. It needs to be clean. I mean, so much of what we do is competitive. So, 2 years ago, year and a half ago or so, I judged the 6A prelims state marching contest in San Antonio. It needed to be clean to get a good score.
Right.
So I don't think that you have to give up that aspect, but I think it's finding other ways to develop that culture of finding where the students' passions are. And maybe not every student's passion is to play perfectly clean, but if they're excited about something that will then allow them to continue buying into everything you're doing in the program, now you've created an experience for students.
Right.
So I think one experience I just had last week, I was judging state solo ensemble contest. And a couple years ago, I'm chair of that committee with the music, and we added a drum set component. And I probably heard 6 students play a drum set solo at state solo and ensemble contest. There was a kid playing a Led Zeppelin tune, and he was just rocking out. He was having so much fun.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? If he's having fun playing that, he's probably going to know that, that instructor believes in me. That instructor knows who I am. He knows that I love drum set. He's going to give me that opportunity to play drum set. Yeah. They're going to ask me to do this. Maybe that, playing 8 on hand and playing it perfectly with those dynamics isn't like my top priority. But you know what? I know that the instructor believes in me and connects with me. So what can I do for that instructor?
Yeah.
So now there's buy-in, there's culture, there's belief in each other. And so I think that's part of what I got out of that time with Keiko. It's like I connected with her music. I connected with her. We're still in touch. Like just 2 weeks ago, I was talking to her and her secretary about some music that she's bringing over to Japan. So we made that connection, bringing to the U.S. from Japan.
Oh, nice.
And so I think that aspect of connecting with the person is so incredibly important, and meeting them where they are, finding where their passions are. My passion was playing marimba, so it was pretty easy for for me and Keiko to.
You guys hit it off.
Yeah. So we both kind of like marimba. So
you're like, can you listen to my Delacluse? She's like, no.
So actually, it's funny. So I was preparing for the World Marimba Competition in 1999, which I ultimately wasn't able to participate in. But I was playing. I was learning variations on Lost Love by David Maslanka, and I was going to bring it to one of her. Actually, I brought part of it, part 1, to her for a lesson, and she listened, and she was like, "Okay, thank you for bringing this. I think you're sounding fine. Keep working on it. What's the next piece that you have?" She really didn't have, and nothing against her at all. That's just not what, that's not the pieces that she connects with.
Right.
She connects with her pieces, her commissions. That's why I was there.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, it was interesting, bringing Delacluse. Actually, I brought him Maslanka.
Yeah.
Nope. You don't bring Maslanka to Keiko.
No.
So you bring Keiko's pieces to Keiko.
Nice.
So,
Makes sense. I got a question on that. We're talking about like creating that connection with students, and like when that happens, magical. Like everyone who's doing this, that's what they're doing it for.
Yep.
They understand. Maybe they've had an experience with that like as a student, and they want to experience that from the teacher side. But that doesn't always happen. Like, give us some percentages. Like when you've been teaching for a good while now, right? How often does that magical connection happen versus when it doesn't? And then how do you maintain like, okay, well, I still got to keep developing the student. I need to be there for them, even though maybe the connection isn't as strong.
So I've gone through stages in my career on how intentional I am with creating that culture and creating that connection. When I first started, I started at A&M Commerce 2001. So I just finished my 22nd year teaching. And so when I first started, it was a very different connection because I was younger. I mean, I had one student that was only 6 months older than me.
Wait a second.
Yeah. So
they were older than you. Or
sorry,
you were,
I was 6 months older than them. Sorry. They were 6 months younger than me. And
Wow.
they were calling me Mr. Zator when I first started teaching at Commerce.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It was very weird. And so at that point, I wasn't necessarily thinking about developing culture. I was thinking about, okay, I need to learn how to teach. I need to learn how to be able to balance performing with teaching. And I don't want to screw this up. And so it wasn't necessarily, I wasn't intentional about building relationships. As I started to build the program, and then also my second year there, we only had 8 majors. So it was very small. So I'm building it. But then as I look back, I was building relationships with my students. And some of those early students that I have, my first one that ever graduated, Jordan Smith, he and I still text and we still talk and we meet for lunch. And I look back and you know what, I created a connection with him. And so I look back and I would encourage young teachers that to think broader than just what are the nuts and bolts of playing paradiddles, getting the tap heights and all of that down so the accents can pop out, on a snare and the technique. You want all of that, but there has to be some intentionality from every teacher to be able to learn about their students. Now, I don't know everything about all of my students, but I hope that I'm out there and I'm there just with them, and just some social aspects, about just kind of hanging out with them. And I hear stories about middle school kids are they're crazy, they're quirky, they're a little weird, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
Love on them for being crazy, quirky, weird, and a little smelly. So that's all good. That's who they are. And so, but then you're meeting them where they are. And so, and then you start to know, in that drum set kid that played Led Zeppelin for me, that instructor found out that that kid loved Led Zeppelin, loved playing drum set, and so that instructor put that kid in that opportunity to thrive in that area. So there's a connection there, and that kid's going to buy in. I think you asked, what happens when maybe there isn't that connection.
Yeah.
That's one of those things. I go back to a book I read several years ago by Michael Bungay Stanier called The Coaching Habit. It's all about asking questions.
Yeah.
Just ask questions. Young teachers, you don't know it all.
Yeah.
I've been teaching 22 years. I don't know it all. But I've gotten a lot better with asking questions and learning about my students way more because I've been more intentional with it over the past 6, 7, 8 years. I feel like I have a good relationship, a really good relationship with my students, even some that were there 15, 20 years ago, some that were there for 12 years ago. And, but then there's others that maybe 12 years ago I didn't have such a great connection with. And I look back, maybe I didn't reach out to them as well as I could have.
Yeah.
Ask questions.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One thing that I've heard from other people is like you're always making someone else feel something. So being
Yeah.
a little bit intentional with how that person feels in your presence. And it can be as simple as, like you said, asking questions. Hey, how's your day going? How, it makes that person feel seen. And of course, that leads to a better relationship with that individual.
Yep. Asking them a question, and then there's two kind of follow-up questions that from my book and from, I've done quite a bit of kind of leadership study, but it's either tell me more, or the what Michael Bungay Stanier calls the awe question, AWE, and what else? So you dig in more.
Yeah.
So then they say what'd you do over the weekend? Oh, I had a good time. I, went on a trip with my family. Cool.
Right.
Tell me more about that. Oh, we went up to Montana. Oh, really? What'd you do in Montana? Oh, do y'all go camping a lot?
Yeah.
This was my first camping trip that we ever did. Now the student is like, you finally, 4 questions in,
Right.
they finally are like, oh, wow, this is actually, you're actually somewhat interested,
Yeah.
And then they're like, boom, they light up.
Yeah.
And so just doing some of those. And again, I'm absolutely not perfect with that, but trying for me to even continue to learn more about the students.
Yeah.
What are you passionate about? And so I think no matter if it's college, high school, middle school age, doesn't matter. Continue to ask questions.
What's your strategy for that? Do you ever have to before you walk into the building, if you've had a really bad day or you've got something going on or you didn't quite beat your marathon time that you wanted to, Dr. Zator, or whatever, you're not 100% on top of your, PAS-President responsibilities, and you have to go in there and you have to make a connection with a student, do you have any suggestions or tips on how you personally, get yourself going and put on that, even if it's contrived, because you're there for your students, what do you do for that?
It absolutely, some days it's, I have to kind of put on a little bit of a face of, I know I'm not having the best day, but it's not about me. It's about the experience that my students are having and what I need to be there 100% for them and for my colleagues. And sometimes I can be a little bit more transparent with my colleagues
Sure.
Than I can with the students. But there's sometimes depending on how far you want to go with some of the middle school and high school kids. But for me, there are some times where I'm like, you know what? It's been a little bit of a rough day. But I'm, and I would tell them, it's been a rough day. It's been a long day. But you know what? I'm so excited to have this time with you.
Yeah.
And so my lessons for that, I teach 30-minute lessons usually, and then percussion ensembles usually an hour and a half. It's, for me, there are some times where I have to really kind of train my mind to be like, you know what? There's nothing I can do about anything that's going on in this time frame. That next hour and a half, there's nothing I can do about that person I got mad at. Or whatever that is. I can't do anything about it. These students are here. They've practiced, hopefully, and we're ready to go. So now I have to compartmentalize.
Right.
And compartmentalizing is really, really important.
I'm so glad you said that. That's a really important part of being an effective teacher, but just being a responsible adult, which I'm working on. It's not quite right, but I think it's one thing that I try to convey to students, you guys don't necessarily know all the things that I'm dealing with, but one thing that I bring to the table every rehearsal, I'm the same, aggressive, let's go get it, let's go do it, let's go do it, let's go do it. And I think they sometimes think that you just must be a maniac, there's no real, and I'd say, no, I have all the same worries about X, Y, and Z that are happening outside of the classroom, but in this time, we have a job. We got to get better at this, and we got to make this better, and just being able to focus on that one thing at that time allows me to eventually go back and then focus purely on problem A or whatever it is, right? Just be able to compartmentalize, be able to focus on one thing at a time and give it your all. And then when I'm done with that, I can give my all to find a solution to this problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
I think this is a great way to sum up kind of what you're talking about. I was fortunate enough to teach a camp this last week with one of your students, Adam Woolery, over at Rockwell High School, and him and I went out to lunch one of the days, and he was kind of picking my brain on some stuff, and I was picking his brain on some stuff, and one of the things we talked about was his experience in your studio. And it wasn't about really the playing or all the different things they got to do, but it was what you're talking about, where he said, quote, like, Dr. Zator is just there for us, and you're someone that they know they can just go into your office and, like, hey, I'm dealing with this, and you've made yourself available, even 30 minutes, an hour, hour and a half at a time, to just sit through and talk with your students about things that they're dealing with. And I think that is just speaks volumes to what you value and what you have really solidified as strategies to make your culture what it is. And so I wanted to share that with you, because that was
awesome.
that I was sitting there thinking, like, oh wow, what a great, I would love to hear that as a teacher.
That's
And another thing he said that was awesome was, like, and maybe something you and Mr. Osmore share in both of y'all's teachings at Commerce, is that culture is number one. You guys believe that the culture of your percussion studio is the number one thing that's important, whether that's relating to success or student enjoyment or retention or whatever thing you use to measure it. And it kind of sounds like at the beginning you didn't really necessarily know you were building that culture, but then as you look back, you're like, oh, I was doing X, Y, and Z, and that was, in the end, it turned out to be beneficial. So talk about, like, what is the culture of Texas A&M Commerce? What things have you done? What measurable things do you do on a daily basis, or have you done to make it that way? Talk about that.
So that's amazing what Adam said to you, and very open. He's an amazing person, and also a really great player.
Yeah.
Was marimbas for Boston Crusaders. I think he was really close to having a spot at SCV. They hadn't finalized everything, but it was looking like might have even been a marimbist for SCV this summer. So an amazing player, played drum set on one of our, plays marimba, plays marching snare, plays drum set, and so and just a really, really great person. So that definitely that warms my heart that he
Fills
said
your
that.
cup a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. So talking about the culture aspect, this was not something that was intentional for me until, like I said, probably 8 to 10 years ago, when I really started to read books about it, when I started reading leadership books, because I trained and I studied to be a percussion teacher, to be a percussion performer and a musician. I didn't take any classes on how to be a leader. And so when I started reading books and listening to podcasts and all that, my mind changed. And when I go out, I do leadership presentations also. And I talk to when I do a presentation with musicians, I kind of ask them, like, how much time would you spend in a practice room every day? Maybe 2 hours, maybe 1 hour a day for 5 years of an undergraduate degree. And then I would say, okay, how much time did you spend on you, on your personal development, in helping yourself become a leader, and practicing what you do every day? Not what you do as a musician, not what you do as a teacher, but what you do, and training yourself to prioritize, how to compartmentalize, how to connect with people, how to talk to people. The Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, an amazing book.
We're reading that right now with our leaders.
Absolutely.
Like what we're using as our vehicle to get them through the summer and talk about leadership.
And that's amazing that you are being intentional to work on that with your students. And so I think I had, hopefully, like, I had developed some of those skills, or we're trying to instill some of that culture into my studio prior to me studying leadership. But once I started to really understand the psychology and the strategies of that, and the Simon Sinek, the big why. Why are we doing this? So some of the things that I do that I feel like help our culture is to talk to the students, ask the students questions about their ideas and what are things that they're interested in for the studio. And so it was about 10 years ago that we were in our percussion pedagogy class, and we went through the John Maxwell Developing the Leader Within You book as part of the percussion pedagogy class that we were doing. It was upperclassmen and graduate students. And we actually went through a strategic plan for the studio. We developed a mission or a vision statement, a mission statement, and values. And so our vision for the studio of what they came up with is empowering excellence. And to this day, I haven't been able to figure out or find any better vision for our studio. Because empowering excellence, we want to do everything that we do, we want to do at the highest level. But I don't want to do it for them. I want to give them the tools to be able to achieve the highest levels. But I can't do that if I don't know what direction they want to go. So that's the why, but then I want to talk to them about the what.
Right.
I want to talk to them a little bit about the how. We talk about repertoire. I've started to become way more intentional about providing more diversity on all of our repertoire, on our repertoire for solo recitals, making sure that we look at all different types of pieces, but also what is our diversity of composers that we're using and that we're selecting from, for their solo recitals, for jury pieces, for percussion ensemble concerts. We have 3 percussion ensembles. I want to make sure we have diversity for all 3 ensembles. And you know what? I talk to the students about that. And I ask them about that. And then I'm really open about, you know what, I was going to do this one piece, but I noticed that we have 0 female composers, or we have 0 African American composers on our program. I don't want to choose this other one. It's a great piece, but it's not right for right now, because we need to make sure that we have some diversity, because that's something that the students said that was important to them.
Right.
So when they start having ownership,
yeah.
And because I hope I'm developing that trust with them, and we actually just did a recording project, really cool project that we were doing, and of like new literature. I got this grant, and I went and sat in on one of the recording sessions they were doing, video, audio, and I sat in on it, and I looked and I was like, I have a guy that he's doing the video. I have a guy that's making check marks of what takes are the good ones. Another guy that's doing audio, and a student that's performing. And I was like, what do y'all need from me? And they're like, Dr. Zator, I think we're good. And at that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, it's
its own thing.
It's its own thing, and we just started it this semester. It's going to be something that's going to be recurring every semester. Now it's just going to become part of what we do, and so when I saw that was like, okay, that is the epitome of empowering excellence.
Yeah.
I saw the why, I helped them get the what, and they figured out the how. They organized the schedule, they organized where they were going, they did it. And they're going to do all the final editing, and I'm going to do the final review. And I'm so excited that now I'm not having to do that. The students are empowered now, and they're just running with it. And that's, I feel like that is a microcosm of what we've been able to do. Now the students, they're excited about doing it. So that's some of the things that I feel like I've been trying to be purposeful. And I talk about it a lot. I talk about empowering excellence all the time. Repetition, repetition, repetition. Communicate that as often as I can, and I think that then develops their mindset of okay, let's trust them. Let's do it. We're buying in.
And it's not, because I see the same things happening with parts of our program, and it's not because I don't want to do anything. It's not because I want to be removed from it, but it's like that frees you up to do what's the next thing that you can do on a macro level. That's the really cool thing about getting to that, where I think an example for me is just seeing the students practice, right? Seeing the students just hammering it out day in and day out without me having to kind of come in and pester them or whatever. That's something that's really improved over the last few years in particular. Or with Shannon's group of kids that he works on with his quartet, where they are just so dedicated to excellence and coming up with, playing new music and making cool videos and stuff. Seeing those things, and then me sitting back as a director, and I just have that opportunity to think okay, what now? We've got these kind of things that are just spinning and they're kind of going on their own. And we have to go in and we have freshmen coming in and we have to kind of explain to them hey, this is what we do. But part of that also, the culture that we've created is the upperclassmen kind of do that for us a little bit too, So I just think that's so cool, and I think a lot of percussion directors want to get their programs to a place like that, and so just hearing your story is just super awesome, I think.
Well, and younger directors, it's a lot of work. It absolutely is. Yeah. But if I would encourage young directors at high school, middle school, even college, young directors, don't get so stuck in the weeds that, okay, this stuff isn't clean right now. My battery isn't playing perfect. You know what? They're going to start to learn how to play better when they start trusting each other, when they start trusting you. And, maybe, if winter drumline isn't the most important thing for the kids, but is for you, that's something that you might have to give up. Maybe for now.
Yeah.
And then you start doing something that the kids want, maybe a piece on the percussion ensemble concert. Maybe you never thought you would want to do, metric lips, but every kid wants to do that. Okay, well then do something with metric lips.
Yeah.
Swallow your pride a little bit.
Right.
Of like, oh, well, no, that's not highbrow enough. Dude, the kids if the kids see that you listen to them and you do things that the kids want to do and are excited about, now you build that trust. And when you build that trust, you don't have to be in the weeds so much that the kids are going to start to figure it out.
Yeah.
And now, like what you said, like the kids are practicing.
Yeah.
And they're excited about practicing. And you're not having to tell them that, but it takes a lot of work and intentionality at the beginning. And you're gonna fail, you're gonna mess up, you're not gonna ask the right question, you're gonna call a kid the wrong name, which I did this past year, and that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Right.
You're gonna screw up, but then you apologize and you then continue to just pour into them. Pour into the kids. And it's not all about I'm pouring in 24/7. We'll probably talk maybe a little bit about work-life balance. It's not being there every second of the day, but when you are there, you're intentional.
Yeah.
And you're connecting with them, and then when you leave, you leave.
Yeah.
And then you go do other things. And because now the students are going to continue thinking about the connection that you made with them. And you know what? That connection is so more important than you telling them, okay, your index finger was a little bit off on your 4 mallet grip. Yes, that's important, but it's not as important as that connection you might make with them for that 3.5 minutes after rehearsal.
Yeah.
So.
That's awesome.
It's good stuff.
I like how we're talking about, kind of focusing in on young director, like advice, like this is how you do it. Could you talk maybe a little bit, and like you said this, like it wasn't something you had thought about when you were younger, about being intentional and about developing leadership skills within yourself and then with empowering other students. A, when did that happen for you? Or B, kind of talk to us, the younger directors, like how do you get that to happen way earlier in your career? And is it important, or is it one of those things that just comes with maturity? Once you've taught for 10 years and you go, okay, I've done all this, won that drumline contest, whatever. Now I'll start developing leadership within my students, or this or that.
Before you answer that, I had this thought about, you were talking about all the books you're reading, and I just am like, I completely agree with you. Like, I just read Atomic Habits for the first time over this last year. I read the How to Win Friends. And I just think, I'm reading these books and I'm almost 30, and I'm like, there just needs to be a list of books and the title of the list of books is books you are going to be glad you read at age, 15 or 16. I feel like there's so many books out there that are great, like those ones that we're talking about, or the John Maxwell stuff. And every single time it's like, I wish I had read this 15 years ago, So that's a side. That can be a podcast. We can almost, the Dream Job podcast can sponsor a list,
right?
And
actually, the PAS Leadership Academy already has this
list. They already took it. All right. Well, we can maybe be affiliated with them.
We're late to the punch.
We'll find other ways.
The link, just go to pas.org and go to resources, PAS Leadership Academy, and there's the book list right there.
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, so great. So
well, we're certainly not here to take away anything from PAS, because we would definitely want to talk about their impact as well. So sorry to interrupt Shannon's question.
No, I that's great. I think maybe like you were saying is like And Dr. This goes back to your question. Like, was there someone maybe who said, "Hey, you need to be doing this.
Yeah.
You need to be doing these things to make your teaching not only fulfilling in the musical aspect, but more in totality of creating wonderful human beings."
For me, no one ever told me, and I didn't know about John Maxwell until about 2011 or 12. And somewhere around there. So nobody talked to me about it. I didn't know. I totally agree with both of y'all of like, people need to know about it now. Young teachers need to know about it. So I jumped into it because I was on the board of advisors. It used to be the board of directors, but kind of that for PAS. And then I was approached about potentially being on the executive committee, which is, kind of that top group of people that are helping to organize Percussive Arts Society, and I was voted on as secretary. I was pretty young back then. I do think I'm the youngest ever PAS president to ever serve.
Sounds about right.
And so at that point, I'm like, okay, if I'm secretary of PAS and I go through, I'm going to be PAS president in like 6 years. Mm-hmm. And so I will then be leading people like that. Other past presidents, Jim Campbell, Doc Shatroma, Mark Ford, Lisa Rogers, Steve Houghton. All these people, I'm like, okay, these are people, that I've seen and that have taught me as well. Mm-hmm. And now I'm going to be leading them. And so I felt like, okay, I need to do something because I don't feel like I'm ready. Right. And I wasn't ready. And so I think I talked to a few people, but it kind of was me saying, I'm not prepared because that's an area that I haven't studied and I haven't practiced, I haven't worked on. And so then I did talk to a few friends and they were like, go to John Maxwell. He's mm-hmm. like the world's foremost leadership expert and trainer. And so I was like, okay, great. And so I went to the one book that was kind of the top recommendation that I saw, Developing the Leader Within You. Mm-hmm. And by the way, anybody that's wanting to get that book, get the first edition. The 1.0, don't get the 2.0. He wrote the 2.0 like 25 years after, not as practical as the first version. Okay, the first version, oh my gosh, just get that one, and that's a great starting point. Anyways, so that's the book that I got. Bam, it connected with me. I was like, wow, I am not doing half of these things. Wait a second, I'm not doing any of these things. And so I started to read it, and I started to like invest in my own self. And so once I did that, I was like, okay, I see some students that aren't really doing some of these things when they could, and that's really going to help them. So that's when I had all the students read it for the percussion pedagogy class. And I think that we got a ton out of that. And I did that for 3 times that I taught that class. It was an every other year class. And then I just started to read more books and investigate and do a little more research about different authors, different podcasts. There's an amazing podcast, Coaching for Leaders, that I just connect with Dave Stachowiak. Everyone, he's been doing it for like 12 years now.
Wow.
Another great podcast for people to listen to. So after they listen to this one,
listen
to Coaching for Leaders. Yeah.
Dream Job podcast right up there.
Dream Job podcast, that's right.
We've been on for 12 minutes. They've been around for 12 years.
Yeah, something. Yeah, it's basically. So young teachers, I know people, it's busy. It's a lot of time, and they're worn out. But even just 5-10 minutes a day. So 10 minutes a week, just read a chapter of that. And so doing that, then you start to, you have self-reflection. And when you have self-reflection, you have self-awareness, now you start to understand what kind of influence do you have on somebody else. John Maxwell, and I go back to this quote all the time. He says, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. How powerful is that?
Yeah.
Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So I always go back to that.
Yeah, I love that. It's fantastic. I think I know Riley doing this, and I've been doing this for a little while now. Was like trying to share those tidbits of information when it like fills you, and you go, "Wow, that's really smart." I wish I had known that when I was 15. And you have a 15-year-old right there.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's really tricky is that we all know that sometimes the students may not react in the aha way that you did to it.
Yep.
But it's still important to plant that seed.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that, Shannon, that you're planting that seed,
Yeah.
that they might not click with it.
You might not see the germination for 10 years. And I've seen this, when because I've been teaching long enough now, that where you have students that go on 3, 4, 5 years down the road, they're in college, or I have students now that, are having kids or all these other things. And they reach out on Facebook, hey, I really remember when you said this. And I didn't go into music, but it applies to my job in this way, and it made me a more productive individual,
Yep.
right? And I saw how I had to step up on my peers because of that organization thing or that discipline thing that I learned way back when. That's really fulfilling for me.
Love that.
I'm going to coin a phrase real quick because I had an experience just this last week teaching this camp where, I was kind of going on about working hard and just giving that extra 10% to make it happen, whatever. And I'm going to call it's like your soapbox moment, where you take a minute and you can just tell yourself, you can feel yourself getting philosophical. If we all had these moments.
We have
where
all something.
You're not teaching music and you're just kind of going on about, hey, we just need to, look, you just did it that much better because I was on to you about da-da-da-da-da. And then you put that 10% more effort in. And so I just think those soapbox moments where you're on your soapbox, like, okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox now. Those are we have no idea the impact that they have on students, And I remember from doing drum corps and, being in different ensembles or whatever, I remember when my teacher would go get on their soapbox about stuff. And, sometimes it was like, we're kind of rolling our eyes or whatever. But other times I'm like, I very clearly remember some of my, prominent teachers, some things and lessons that they would share with me that have stuck with me forever. Cool. All right, we're back. Okay, so I just want to kind of summarize some of the things we're talking about. We talked about soapbox moments and, being philosophical, but planting that seed in students and letting that be something that, will stick with them forever. But really, you talked a lot about just being intentional, right? And that was kind of the difference for you was, you were doing some of the things maybe in the first part of your career, and then when you decided, I'm going to start reading these books and actually committing this to memory, that intentionality was a game changer for you, right? And then, I think you also brought up just it should not be shied away from that what we do is hard work, and I think people maybe in today's day and age, especially, and people have probably been saying that for decades and decades, but, it's certainly an observation.
Use it again, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it takes what it takes, right? We're big Nick Saban fans here at our program, and there's something to be said about just working harder than everybody else. So I think there's not going to be an easy pathway to success. So accepting that and knowing that early on is this is going to be a grind, and if I want my program to be great, or you want whatever it is that you're involved in to be great, you're going to have to work.
Well, and I think it's. I know we're kind of summarizing this part, but I don't necessarily think it's. I want my program to be great.
Sure.
I want my students to be great people who are great players, in that order.
Yeah.
And if you think about it that way, the playing side will start to. You have to learn how to teach. You have to be a good teacher. You have to grow as a teacher. Absolutely. Yeah. But that will happen. But if you're not intentional about growing in yourself and having that self-awareness and growing your people, then the teaching side of things, it doesn't matter. You could be the best teacher in the world. If the students and the people that you connect with aren't buying in to you, then you're just fighting, and that's no fun at all. And so
you can only get so far.
Yeah, develop yourself, develop the people, and then the other parts will take care of themselves.
One thing I say to my students often, it's not a quote I contribute to myself, but pay attention to your intention. We talk about that the beginning of rehearsal, hey, what do we intend to do here? We intend to clean this section. We intend to do this. We intend to show and demonstrate our work ethic in this next 30 minutes or next hour rehearsal. And then that can be extrapolated to any other situation. When I go into a meeting with Riley and I have to go, what's my intention here in this design meeting? What's my intention in this this outing with my wife or this family time? Start to learn in one avenue how to do that allows you to do it in every avenue eventually.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's great.
I love that.
Attention to intention.
Yeah, pay attention to your intention.
Pay attention to your intention. Love it.
So we've talked on a grand scale about a lot of things that maybe don't get talked about enough in the percussion director world, but you have so much more to offer than just your percussion director teaching. So I want to ask you a little bit more about some of the other hats that you wear and kind of see if we can tie that all back into being a great percussion director and being a great human being like we're talking about. So you not only are a professor of percussion at Texas A&M Commerce, but you're on the school board at Royse City ISD. How many years have you been doing that now?
I just finished my 10th year.
Wow, that's
Has it really been
amazing.
10 years?
Yeah, 10 years.
That's incredible. I saw the graduation photo. It looked awesome.
Yes.
Like you guys are having a good time. I think that's the pro of being on the board for a school district with one high school. It's one graduation, not two
Yep.
or three or four or five or six.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing.
You're also PAS past president, obviously. In addition to that, what are you serving in any official? Is past president an official role? Is that what you're currently in, or are you past that now?
I will always be a past president.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So PAS, it's always 2-year terms for every officer position on the executive committee. So I was secretary for 2 years. One of those, actually, I served secretary and second vice president at one point. So yeah, doing 2 roles at once, not recommended. And then I went to president-elect, and then PS president 2017, 2018 is when I served. And then I was the immediate past president, still serving on the executive committee in 19 and 20. And then after that, then I rotate off the executive committee, and now I'm a part of the Council of Past Presidents.
Gotcha.
So sounds like the Order of Jedi Masters.
Yes.
Well, when you sit at the table, with we always have a lunch at PASEC with all of the past presidents, and I'm there with Jim Campbell, Steve Houghton, Lisa Rogers, Bob Breithaupt, Mark Ford. I mean, all of those
heavy hitters.
All of those folks. There's some heavy hitters.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting John Beck Sr.
Wow.
John Beck
I
Jr.
saw he was at the last PASIC.
Yeah, Julie Hill. I mean, these are some of the people that, some of them I served with, and Chris Hanning is there now, and people that I served with, but also like we all have that same connection, and so but there's no like official capacity that like I have to like do something on that. So we serve on the board of advisors, so we're still on that advisory committee, but we don't have to get elected to anything.
Gotcha.
So most of the past presidents, we've done our time on the executive committee, and so we, in a way, it's like, okay, we want to allow other people to have that opportunity.
Yeah.
So I served on the keyboard committee, I served on percussion ensemble committee earlier in my career, and I feel like now that's a time for other people early in their career to serve on those committees.
I think that's one thing that PS has started to do really well is try to invite the younger people to get involved and not just
The people who've been around.
they've been around, they're up there and they're on this kind of this upper echelon, and the younger folks feel intimidated and don't get involved. I've seen a very intentional shift in the past maybe 7 to 8 years where they're like trying to get more people involved, and you start to realize, and in other parts of the world and parts of my life, I've seen where like sometimes there was a heyday, of an activity, and those people will start to get older, and then are we training the next generation? Or if we're not, then we risk losing those things.
Right.
So I think PS is doing a really great job of making that a priority.
That's great.
So board member, PAS, involved with PAS in a lot of ways, and then UIL, PML committee. Are you do you have an official title in that role, or are you just involved with expanding the list and editing the list and all of those things?
Basically, I'm the chair of the percussion PML selection committee.
Yeah.
So I think it was like 2012, maybe 2011 or 12. The list hadn't been revised in like 4 years at that point. And so people had kind of talked to me about it, because I had done several times of selecting the all-state music. And so I called up the UIL office, and Dick Floyd was the executive director at that point, and he and I had known each other for a while, and I was like, basically, so what's happening with the next selection process? You know, I'd love to help out if you need some help. It's like, well, we have boxes of percussion music sitting in our office that we aren't going to do the same process. I was like, well, I can do it. And so he mailed it was like 8 boxes of music, all hard copies at that point. And so me and a select group of people, we actually did that first round. And I was like, well, I could probably do that. So I did it again. And then I did it again. And so now.
You're a yes man.
Dude. Like,
you're describing a yes man.
That is the understatement of the
That's funny.
past 2 decades, I think.
My gosh.
So I've been doing it now since like 2012, and I have a system now that I have. So I'm chair of the whole percussion selection process. So any of the new additions, I kind of have the final say, but I organize everything to initiate it. And so we have a pretty sweet process now. And so I have subcommittees, I have subcommittee chairs, and then 4 or 5 people on each of those committees to help review the music. Yeah. So we're just about to submit the new additions for the keyboard and percussion ensemble music for the 23-24 school year. We had over 600 pieces submitted to be considered for just those 2 categories.
Wow.
So,
and how many new pieces do you try to add, or do you try to keep it at a certain number?
Anywhere from 15 to 25%
okay.
of what the current list is. So,
okay, cool.
So we'll have, I think we have like 400 and over 450 keyboard pieces. And gosh, I think it's almost like 600 or more percussion ensemble pieces on the PML now.
Wow. What about snare drum?
I don't know. I haven't looked at that list in a little while. So we just did keyboard and percussion ensemble this year. Snare drum and multi-percussion, some others will be next year.
Okay.
Those are on now a 3-year rotation.
Gotcha.
Keyboard and percussion ensemble are on a 2-year rotation now.
Gotcha. Very interesting. So all of those things you do, and I'm sure I'm missing other things that you're involved in.
Well, I did say yes. I got invited for the 4th time to select the all-state music for the TAMU-C All-State process for this year.
Congratulations.
Why did I say yes?
Is that breaking news on the Dream Drop podcast?
Man.
It'd
It'd be breaking news if I told you what the etudes were.
Yeah, that would be. Well, we have.
It would also probably be illegal. So.
Yeah, probably against the rules. You might not be asked
probably.
again if you did that.
Oh, well, then there we go.
There you go.
Is that how I get out of it?
Yeah. We'll never ask Brian again.
Yeah, we have some books back there. We can make some suggestions that we may or may not already be working with our students. No, I'm just kidding. But that's awesome. And then, from a personal life, perspective, you're a marathon runner.
I've never run a marathon.
I thought you did run a marathon.
No,
or half marathon?
Half marathon.
Oh, okay.
So.
Did you run 2 half marathons? Because that equals 1 marathon.
Oh, that's
how
true.
the math
Well, then,
works.
I like that math. That sounds great.
In total, we've all run marathons in our
there you
lives.
go.
How much we've, walked around this planet. I think the hip hop music stopped. That's not good. Or maybe it's just really quiet.
Keep that
There we
going.
go.
It's a little better. Anyways, so
This is good running music.
yeah, marathon, runner, and then you have a wife and 2 kids, right? Where your son is in college, and you think your daughter's still in high school.
Still in high school.
So with all of those things, Dr. Zator, how do you do all of them, and how do you continue to make all of everyone you're around happy and excited to be around you and work with you? And obviously we invited you on this podcast for a reason. We enjoy being around you, and you've had a good.
He didn't say no to us.
He did not say.
I did. That's the yes man.
Yeah, that would have been his first one. He's like, you know what? I'm going to stop this right now. That would have been maybe wise, but.
Well, you promised free food, so
I did,
I think
yes.
that's. I say yes to that.
What was that?
Yes, lies might have been told. Just to get you
Oh,
here.
all right. I think I'm done here.
No, I'm just kidding. No, we'll. Yeah. So, what's your strategy? I feel like I've heard it from you before, but for the listeners, how do you organize all those things in your life?
I'll use the buzzword work-life balance.
Yes.
That buzz. Like
That's what we're talking about here, folks.
we're talking about the work-life balance.
Yeah. So I do well with it some points, and I fail miserably at other times. Really, I mean, I do. I mean, there's times where I I get really busy, and I work from home, and I have kind of my study and practice room up at home that sometimes I do a lot of work there. And when my kids were younger, like there would be times like my wife would be like, okay, it's time. You need to stop. Okay, I need to stop. And several people would keep telling me, especially when I was doing PAS stuff, like those emails, they will wait.
Yeah.
You can do them tomorrow. And by the way, they're never going to stop.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard because you want to answer everybody. You want to get back to everybody. And that doesn't always happen. And so I think when I do fail, I do my best to apologize. And I hope that people understand that it wasn't intentional, that maybe I didn't email them back. It wasn't like I said, you know what, I don't want to talk to that person at all, so I'm just going to ignore them. I read it, and it slipped by the wayside, and I had another 60 emails that day that other priorities came up to the forefront.
Yeah.
And so just being honest, and then when you do fail, and whether it's to other people, to your family, like just be honest with them. So I think that to me has served me well. And then again, I think it's prioritizing what's important. And one of the things that I think I did well with, especially when I was younger in my career, and I had two young kids. It was a 1 day a month activity that I did with my kids at their school, in the elementary school. Before I was on the board, this was like mid-2000s. Our son was born in 2003, and he was in first grade. There was a program that they started called All Pro Dad. And it's an international program, and former
This is run by Tony Dungy, right?
Tony Dungy.
Yeah,
Yep.
I've heard of this. Yeah.
Yes. So the principal at Dylan's, my son's name is Dylan, at his elementary school, invited me and another dad to be co-captains, and so we kind of helped run it and everything. And that program was just a game changer. I feel like for me and other dads in the district and the schools, because one morning a month, we would go in 45 minutes, an hour early before school started. The school bought donuts, they bought milk, coffee, and it would just be dads and their kids. And that was such a special time. And the kids would wake up early and want to be there. And that was a way, like, I look back on those moments, and like that was a time for, like, I was able to connect with my kids.
Yeah.
And I know it was only 1 day per month, but like I remember it. I've talked to the kids, and I think my kids, I think they still remember it. I still have dads coming up to me saying, oh yeah, I remember you were the captain for the Davis All-Pro Dad thing. We would go to that every day, and our kids would love doing that. And so that was one of those things that it was a special thing that we could do. And so, and now, like, especially for quite a while, me and Dylan, a big thing were the Marvel movies for us. And that was a way we would connect. Now, we have a teenage daughter, and so that connection is very different than with a teenage son.
Right.
And so, but for the past couple of summers, she loves doing Six Flags. So, I love doing the Six Flags thing. And so going there, and that's a time where, like, I could just try to just put everything else away and let's do that. And so, so those are some things that I try to be intentional with it. And I'm not always there for everything, but I try to, our daughter's doing dance. And she's an amazing dancer. So I want to go see her dance stuff. Sometimes she doesn't want me to go because she gets real nervous.
Right.
So I don't go when she doesn't want me to, but I always want to be there. And I tell her that I would love to be there, but I'll respect her wishes. So,
Honest question, is All Pro Dad co-captain anywhere listed on your current resume? Yes.
yes, absolutely.
Is it really?
It absolutely is.
I love that.
Yep. So whenever I retire, that would be a company and a job I would absolutely 100% look to see if I could do anything to help.
That's awesome.
And work for All
That's
Pro
very
Dad.
cool. That's
Yeah.
very cool. I think along the same track, and this, you can get into this however much you want to, but what about when it comes to your wife, and how has that journey been, because like to be honest, like everyone that I know that's in this type of role, man, we're workaholics. We love to do work, and it's really difficult to balance that. So how has that journey been for you?
It has grown in our relationship. This summer will be 24 years of marriage.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And there were early on, when I was really kind of early on my career, I would stay at Commerce for quite a while, and I wouldn't call her. And I wouldn't call her to tell her I would be late. I would say, I'll be home by 6. Well, it's 7 o'clock and I'm still up at school and I haven't called her. And early on in my career, she like basically laid it down. She was like, you need to call me. If you're gonna be late, that's fine. I understand that. I don't want you to be late, but if you are, you have to communicate. And so it came down to communication.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. And so, and there'd be times like we didn't like schedule, okay, we're gonna do a monthly date night or something like that. That's not necessarily what we did, but recently we've been doing more cooking together.
Nice.
We do a meal plan thing with every plate. It's a meal plan thing that we started about 3 years ago, and that's an awesome thing. And we have like 45 minutes that we just cook together, and it's so much fun, 2 or 3 days a week, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
And so, but early on it was like, okay, I need to communicate with her. And then knowing that, okay, here's my schedule. This is what I'm doing. What do you have? What do you want me there for? And then what kind of things can I tell Commerce that, okay, I'm not going to be there for? And then just communicate and be open with her, open with the kids. Like, these are the things I can be at, these things I can't be at. And trying to be in the moment when I'm not working. And even if it's a few things that I'm there for the kids. Maybe I'm not there for every single thing, but when I am there, I'm there. So I coached my son's soccer team one year. I tried helping out with the Haley in soccer. That was not a good thing. So it's like, okay, so dance is much more your thing. So,
Right.
but just communicating. And with Trina, my wife, it's just communicating with her. And letting her know, like, okay, these are some things that are coming up. What do we have? And then, okay, I need to just close the computer. It'll be later, and let's just sit and watch a movie together. Let's watch some TV shows together or something like that. So again, being intentional.
Yeah, I love that.
I heard you explain at some point, and you may or may not still do this, but the 4 quadrants.
Uh-huh.
Can you explain that real quick for our listeners, what that is and how you use that in your career?
Yep. So this helps me prioritize work stuff, stuff at Commerce, stuff, especially when I was president, PAS stuff, and then even family aspects. So this is from John Maxwell's The Developing the Leader Within You. I think it's chapter 2 of priorities. And there's 4 quadrants. So the top left is high priority, high urgency. These are the things on your list. Instead of having a to-do list, I used to have kind of a running to-do list, and I had 40 things on my list to do. Well, I look at it, I'm like, it's overwhelming. I don't know where to start. So the 4 quadrants allows me to understand what I need to do first things first. Because sometimes I would do the second things first and drop the ball. And so the top left quadrant is high priority, high urgency. Those are the things that absolutely have to be done now. And it's the important things that need to be done now, okay? So then you go to the quadrant below it, and it's low priority, high urgency. These are the things that need to be done right now, but probably will only take about 5 to 15 minutes to do. They're not, you don't need 100% brain power to do those things. It's reconnect with this person or email this person, send them back because they've been waiting for a response. Something like that. Like kind of thing, again, you don't need 100% mental capacity. Just do it, scratch it off, go, and then you're moving forward. Top right quadrant is high priority, low urgency. So these things are like maybe some bigger projects you need more mindset for, but aren't due in the next week or 2.
Yeah.
But you need to put it on your list. But you can see it and you're like, you know what? I know it's on the horizon. I know it's important. You know what? I actually have about an hour right now in this day that I have my high priority, high urgency stuff. What I can do now, I can put an hour of my mental energy for that and do 10% of what that project needs right now and be just a little bit farther forward. Yes, what a great feeling.
Yeah.
And then the lower right quadrant is low priority, low urgency. I have some things on there that have been there for 3 years. I'm serious.
The podcast went on. As soon as he got the invite, it was like,
Yeah.
everything
I
was...
know, it was there, but okay, you caught me in a weak moment. So that's one of those things of like, you know what, this would be a really cool thing for the students.
Yeah.
Or something for me personally. One of the things that I had on there for many, many years was finish arranging some of the Japanese koto solos written by Minoru Miki. I had arranged 2 of them over 20 years ago, almost 25 years ago. And he gave me a collection of 20 pieces in his collection. Wow. I'd only arranged 2, and I'd always wanted to do more. Last spring, 2022, I was like, you know what? This summer, I'm going to do it. And so I moved that to high priority, high urgency, and I did it. I arranged 8 more, got them engraved, got the design published, and now they're ready to go. And I was able to mark it off, and that is one of these accomplishments of my career that is one of my highlights of
awesome.
An accomplishment. But it had always been. And what it did, though, when I saw that low priority, low urgency, and I saw it on there, I didn't feel guilty that I wasn't doing it. When I see high priority, low urgency, and I'm not doing it, I don't feel guilty that I'm not doing it right now, because I look to the left and I look at high priority, high urgency, and I see that, okay, there's 12 things on there, and now I know what to do.
Yeah.
And I don't feel guilty for not doing these other things.
Yeah.
That has, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for almost 10 years now, and it just helps me be comfortable with me and what I'm doing in my life, what I'm doing in my career, what things need to be done right now. And it's okay if I'm not doing everything right now. It's okay.
Yeah.
And man, that is just, it took a huge weight off my shoulders.
I like how that, one of the things I like to think about is like having self-discipline, and that organization actually allows you more freedom.
Yep.
Right. Some people are afraid of like being a schedule, having a schedule and things. I think, well, I'm going to be tied to the schedule and I won't have the freedom that I want. But actually having that organization allows you to say, I have a moment to go have fun or watch a movie or go out to eat or what have you. So it's kind of really nice. One aspect that you've kind of alluded to a couple times, especially in this last segment, and something that I struggle with mightily, and one thing I'm learning on to try to get better about, and it's self-grace. When we drop the ball on project A or whatever, or family time, or we didn't get to that arranging, or we didn't get to go to that clinic, right? Having self-grace. Can you kind of talk about what that means to you in your life?
Yeah, that's a hard one, because we didn't get into this just for the, we have a little bit of an ego, and we want to. No. We feel like we can do it all.
Yeah.
And if we don't do it all, then we feel like we've failed.
Yeah.
Yep.
We failed ourselves, or we failed our students, or we failed our spouses, or we failed our kids. And so that self-grace is really hard for us. But I think I love even just that term of giving yourself grace and knowing that you can't do it all.
Yeah.
Is something that I've had to learn. And I've had to develop a little bit of a thick skin, even for myself. And when people come back to me of like, you didn't send back that email that I sent you. And no, I didn't. And at that point, I'm like, no, I didn't. I apologize. I'll get back to you soon. And you know what? At that point, if it's a high priority type of thing, I'm going to move it to a high priority, high urgency, depending on what that is, or a low priority, high urgency. I'm going to get back to them, be done with it, and move on. But that self-grace is really important to be able to admit when you're at fault, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And be comfortable with who you are, knowing that you had the best intentions, and maybe it just didn't pan out, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So you didn't get that next job. You didn't win that competition. Your student didn't win that competition. Man, maybe if I would have scheduled 3 more rehearsals. But is it about that award, or is it about the experiences that the kids had? And I think that comes with that grace of, okay, was it that experience? Now, yes, I'll be disappointed.
Sure.
You know, if I don't win that competition or that sort of thing, or get that next promotion or whatever, absolutely you can be disappointed. But if you did what you could, then that should, it's hard to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And it takes time, and sometimes you're not going to have that grace. But then once you start to realize, okay, I don't have to do everything. I don't have to be there for every single thing. And that if I am trying to be at it, the people close to me, my wife, my kids, my students, they know that I'm doing everything I can for them in whatever that next aspect or project is.
I think it's a big one when we start to think about people not sticking with it, and this job takes a lot of hours, but sometimes we beat ourselves up more than necessary. Right? We're kind of high performance, high demand people. Like, we demand a lot of our students. We demand a lot of ourselves. And as I'm on my personal journeys, like, learning to say, okay, I could have done better there, or that didn't happen, or instead of beating myself up about it, letting it go, knowing that I tried my best. I really did put forth the correct amount of effort that I wanted to, and it didn't pan out. All right, on to the next thing. Instead of just kind of beating yourself down, getting down the doldrums to just fighting yourself, when you could be putting energy and mental effort into something else.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too it is a lot of work, but it's also that compartmentalizing. Some things that we do require absolute 100% of our attention and our mental energy. But then there's other things that we do only need 80% of our mental energy, maybe 70% of our mental energy. That's really hard. Yeah. I remember when I was doing my doctorate, so I was teaching full-time at A&M Commerce. I was a full-time doctoral student at North Texas. That means I was teaching at Commerce Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then I was in Denton Tuesday, Thursday, taking classes and lessons. I took, I think, 10 hours one semester and 11 hours the next semester, fall and spring. And Dylan, our son, was 6 months old.
That's insane.
In my mind, I had a goal. I wanted to get all A's for my doctorate. And I remember my wife, she would be like, Brian, what's wrong with a B? Yeah, she's like, what's wrong with an A?
Your name starts with a B.
Exactly.
Did she use that? I would have used that argument.
Yeah, she probably did, actually. She's smarter than me, so she would have done that. Yeah. So, it was, and I still remember that. It's almost 20 years ago. And she was like, Brian, what's wrong with a B? You're still going to get the degree. No one knows what your GPA is. Right. And there's times where I think about that it's like, you know what, I don't have to get the A++ every single thing I do. Yeah. That's hard for us. We want to be perfect on everything. But when we start to realize that not everything has to take 100% of my mental energy, man, that is a load off of our backs. You know what, I got 30 minutes to do these emails. Mind numbing, I'm just going to do it, get it done with. Bam, now I can go on to the next thing. Now I'm actually kind of rejuvenated. I can go spend 100% on this. I'm going to practice for an hour. And man, I'm going to spend 100% of my energy practicing.
Yeah.
Okay, but for the record, did you get all A's in your doctorate?
I got all A's and 1 B.
Oh, you had to get one.
I had to get that. I had to
Doctors
get one.
Brian Zator, 3.5. What's this other?
Yeah, it's not like your name on your email is like, Dr. Brian Zator, got 1B. In parentheses. That is not the reality. I think kind of tying this conversation back to talking to percussion directors and really band directors, and there's so many things that we do that I feel like a majority, if not almost all of us, just all think of them as I have to do it now. You think of the many, many, many things that our job requires: organizing equipment, inventory, lesson teachers, emails, administrative stuff, professional development, musical professional development, also school assigned professional development, but how many people do we know that use that system? Close to none, probably. And so I feel like, if more people knew about that, or more people read that John Maxwell book, then they would be able to say, okay, it's not as bad as it looks. It's close, probably.
There's a lot.
You organize it, and then organizing it doesn't do the task, but it at least puts it in a sense where you can breathe and you can feel better about the way you approach it.
I've worked with quite a few of my students on this, and basically we take a list. We list everything that they have to do, and then I say, okay, you have to forcefully put these in in the quadrants. If we're always thinking everything is a high priority, high urgency, we are going to get burnt out.
Yeah.
And so not everything has to be in a high priority, high urgency. It's really the top, and it goes back to the Pareto principle, another John Maxwell thing that he kind of teaches. And basically you need to spend 80% of your time and energy on the top 20% of your tasks. Think about that. 80% of your energy and your time has to go to the top 20% of your tasks. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And so when you start to think about that, then 80% of your job is all like the second level. Those are the second things.
Yeah.
Those aren't the first things first.
Yeah.
Think about that. That's,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
It's freeing. It's
Yeah,
freeing. It's
Yep.
freeing in a way.
relieving for sure. Okay, so there's two more like main things I want to talk to you about while we have you here, and you provided like the perfect segue. I almost was like getting ready to just play the video when you were talking about the arranging that you did. That was perfect, but obviously there's a lot of other great things we were able to talk about. Something I really want to do with this podcast is give our guests a chance to showcase something that they're passionate about, because we can sit here and talk ad nauseum about percussion and all the things about it, but I mean, let's listen to some music. I mean, we're all musicians.
Love it.
Like, let's just listen to some music, and then I want to give you a chance to just kind of talk about why this is important to you and why you're passionate about it. So this is Dr. Zator performing To the South from Ballads for Koto Solo by Minoru Miki, which you arranged for marimba. So here we go. All right, cool. Wow, what an amazing performance that was. Super cool. Talk to us about that piece.
So this one is To the South, and that performance is actually the world premiere of it. I did it at the Faculty Showcase Concert fall of 2022. And so, so koto is actually the traditional instrument of Japan. And so it's a stringed instrument, so people just kind of need to look it up. But I went to a concert that Minoru Miki was giving, and I'd heard a koto orchestra.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, there were like 60 koto players on stage, and it was just one of the most magical sounds I'd ever heard. And so, and I was able to meet him through Keiko, introduced us, and so I was able to talk with him and talk with him about koto. And in my mind during that concert in Japan, I always thought, man, this music would sound amazing on marimba. And so he gave me his collection, Ballads for Koto Solo. It has 20 pieces. There's it's the 4 seasons basically, and 5 movements within each season. And so I arranged 2 of them, the Young Sprout and Skylark. Many years ago, I had the first 2 tracks on my solo marimba CD, and I'd always wanted to arrange more. And this, basically the 20 pieces, I played through all of them.
Oh my goodness.
So I played through all of them on marimba, just kind of like hacking it out, and then I would listen to the original koto recordings. To like, which ones kind of like connect, which ones did I connect with? And I found 8 others that would work great. Other 10 just were great as koto solos. They're going to stay koto solos.
Yes.
And so, but I found 8 of them, and it worked out so well because some of them are a little bit easier, and then some of the ones, like the ones that I did many years ago, are a little bit harder. And so the To the South is probably one of like the intermediate advanced pieces. And basically they're written for 21 strings, which is kind of the mid-range of the marimba. And in this arrangement, especially To the South, I felt like this piece could expand to the lowest note. So I used the low C, I used the high C. And so I expanded it. I added octaves where there weren't any octaves. I changed registers. I go up a little higher sometimes when the koto didn't. I went lower. I would add octaves above. I would add octaves below. I add grace notes for, there's like glisses, there's pitch bends that a koto can do that a marimba can't. So
Not supposed to.
No, it is not. And so I experimented a ton to try to figure out how can I recreate some of those koto sounds on a marimba.
Wow.
And so To the South is actually one of my, I actually love all of them. Every one of them is a different like character and a different sound and a different feeling, and just, man, I just love them all. So
Yeah.
Super cool.
I'll say this for those of you who are joining us on the video side of this thing. It's really cool. I was watching Dr. Zator like react to what he did on the entire time from the beginning. It was like accent, his body would move, and that's really cool to see these great performers that do that. You know, even just the thought process of creating those notes creates a physical response. I think it's amazing.
Thank you.
I think that's something you're known for also from people who I've seen. I mean, you were playing at a local percussion concert, and I knew someone in the crowd that was texting me like, yeah, Dr. Zator's playing, and wow, he just like super expressive when he plays, and like they had never seen you perform before. And so I think that's a cool trait of your performance, is how if you can tell how much you love it based on how you react and how you exaggerate the different notes and stuff. Now I had a question. I saw there's a grand piano. Is it a grand piano duet with the marimba, and the grand piano player just like didn't show up that day, or so you just had to go along with just the marimba, or
It is grand piano, but the whole part is tacit.
it's tacit?
Oh, there you go.
Okay, I was thinking that the whole time.
I
was like,
figured, you know what, percussionists, we have so many, orchestral pieces that's tacit, this movement. I needed to do something.
So
Yeah.
if you're looking at buying this arrangement, don't waste your money on the piano book, because every solo is tacit. Or maybe you just had it in the room for a certain ambiance, right? No, I'm kidding. But I thought that was really great. Can we listen to the Lions Roar
Sure.
as well? And you can
Yeah.
maybe talk a little bit about that, because I think people really want to hear about this.
So do you want to listen to it first, or do you want me to say something about
Sure,
this?
yeah. Why don't you preface what this is before we listen and watch?
So for quite a few years, I started to really have this idea to celebrate our A&M Commerce alumni that had moved into the compositional realm. So several of my former students are doing amazing work in the as both percussionists, musicians, performers, but also a lot of them are actually composing now. And then some that weren't my students but that are alums have also been composing for a long time. So I just had this idea. It kind of came from the Blue Book that Jim Campbell curated. All University of Kentucky alums that they composed snare drum and tenor drum solos for Volume 1. All Kentucky alum. I was like, you know what? We're kind of known for marimba. Marimba's kind of a big thing that I do. A lot of our students do that, and we have a lot of composers. And so I just had this idea of like, you know what? No other program in the entire world has had their alumni compose marimba solos. We're going to be the first. So we're the first school to ever have alumni compose a whole book of marimba solos.
Wow.
And so
How many are there in the book?
there's 11 solos.
Nice.
So, but guys like Caleb Pickering, which so many people know, he did his undergrad with me. Louis Raymond Culker
Yep.
did his undergrad with me. Alex Shaver, he did his master's in composition at SMU. Alex Halley ended up he won 2 straight PAS, or the PASIC individual keyboard competitions. The first one with a piece that it was a solo that we kind of arranged, kind of modified it a little bit to make it a little bit more solo-y. And then the second piece, second year that he won, consecutive year, he wrote his own piece.
Wow.
And then Dan Moore teaches up at University of Iowa. He's an alum. Key Poulin, who, is famous in the band world.
Yeah, I had no idea.
He graduated in the early 80s from A&M Commerce.
Wow.
Had never written a marimba solo.
Oh my gosh.
And so I talked to these individuals, and I was like, so is this something that you're interested in?
Shout out Jim Gist.
So Jim Gist, who got his master's with me.
Yeah.
And so he ended up writing 2 solos, a 2-mallet and a 4-mallet solo.
Nice.
And so, and I had a student that had just recently graduated, Matt Schneider, who went up to NIU and did a percussion and composition degree. And so all these guys that were like, they're just doing so many good things. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to get those alums and their compositions. And then I also wanted to have our current students and current faculty members. So at that point, me, Corey Doran, Sandy Rennick, I wanted us, the faculty, and current percussion majors recording the videos.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so we did that, so we married that, and then C. Allen Nathan Daughtry was kind enough to put it all together, and so it's published by C. Allen.
Cool.
So it's such just a wonderful project to bring so many of these people together. And Samuel Peruzzolo Vieta composed a piece that I knew I wanted to do. He was a master's student. I met him in Brazil in 2006. He came up to do his master's with me, one of the nicest individuals you will ever know. And he wrote just a beautiful piece, very different, but a beautiful piece that I decided to perform his piece, which is Memo,
Cool.
the one that we're about to hear.
All right, let's check it out.
Nice.
Awesome.
So again, it's not your typical type of marimba solo.
Yeah.
I was about to say that was very different. You hit the nail on the head with your description of it.
Very different.
Very
and
different.
that's just the way that he writes. He writes in colors. He writes in unique tonalities. And Samuel actually, gosh, it might have been 2012 or 13. He won the PAS composition contest with the marimba solo that he wrote during his second year at Commerce. So I think it's like the whimsical nature of particles, spherical particles or something like that. It is a crazy piece. And it's like you're playing with 4 mallets and there's different hardnesses, and there's times where he actually has the performer switch, like rotate the mallets to where instead of like in the right hand, you have hard on mallet 4, medium hard in mallet 3. And there's times where he switches because he wants a different color.
Yeah.
I'd never seen that done before. And he does it so effortlessly.
Wow.
And I ended up judging the PAS competition with 4 of like amazing performers, and all 4 of them had to play that piece that Samuel composed, because that was the set piece, because it was the winning piece for the PAS composition contest.
Wow.
Such a cool thing.
Neat.
So
Neat.
That's incredible.
Super neat.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And I know you had also sent in the Caleb Pickering Berserker, but let's leave that as a teaser, because you are going to perform an abbreviated version of that with our students this December at the upcoming Midwest Clinic and Concert.
so honored that y'all invited me to perform with your students. And,
Absolutely.
I'll try not to scream at them too much,
Oh,
like
please.
I did
More screaming the
a
better.
couple years ago with Crown of Thorns. So
That was good screaming, though. I mean,
That's
that like
good
put
screaming.
us over the finish line with that piece. That was great. No, but we're super excited about that, and can't wait to get going on that.
it's
with
gonna
you.
be awesome.
So this has been amazing to hear from you on all these different things. The last thing that I had in my questions that I wanted to take a moment to talk to you about is, on top of all these other things you're involved with, man, I'm just impressed with like not only the quantity, but the quality of your content on the internet. I mean, that is something that I think goes, like, we see Dr. Zator post this, so much that we almost don't even think about, like, the work that must go in to you doing that. Like, talk about, like, first of all, talk about, like, why you do it, and then what is how do you organize that? How do you plan for that? Talk about your content creation.
Yeah. So it was actually fall of 2019 is when I started my video series called Marimba Minute.
That's right.
And so that's kind of where a lot of this comes from. So I wanted to create more of a social media online presence with some intentionality. And so it's funny, I asked my students, like, what kind of things would y'all want to see? And then I had this idea, and it's John Maxwell does a Minute with Maxwell podcast. And it's 1 minute, one video every single day. And I was like, I like that alliteration, that Minute with Maxwell. And then that Marimba Minute just kind of popped out. I was like, oh my gosh, that kind of flows pretty well. And I asked my students, and they were like, Dr. Shay, that actually is kind of cool, you know? So I would do some videos, and I would, do quite a bit. And then over the past 3 months or so, I kind of got not really burnt out, but I felt like the pressure of like I have to post all the time. And then that self-grace, like you were talking about before, that came in of like, you know what? I don't have to post all the time. If I don't post, it's okay. Nobody knows that I didn't post except me. It's okay.
Yeah.
People are still going to move on with their lives if I didn't post a Marimba Minute video.
Yeah.
So, but then I was like,
but how do I get the best block chord technique?
How do I do this?
I need the exercise right now.
So I gave myself some grace, and then I was like, you know what? I need to have a little bit more focus. So over the past 3 months or so, I've actually been focusing more on how I do some of the videos, the topics that I do. I mean, I still do pieces and technique, but they're a little bit shorter. I'm creating kind of a bank of videos. I do like kind of one day and spend a couple hours. I'm just like, okay, I'm going to take these videos, and, not all of them are first takes, but it's like, okay, I know I can play Ghost Garden really well, okay? Maybe I slipped this a little note, but I want it to be perfect, you know? So I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And so then I do that, and that is going to be 100%.
Yeah.
And so I do that, and then I just kind of create a plan of, okay, over the next 3 weeks, I have my content.
Yeah.
And I'm going to post it these times. I've talked to some social media managers
Yeah.
that know that arena way more than I do. Again, I think that's something for young teachers. You don't need to know everything. And it's okay if you don't know everything, and you absolutely 100% need to ask questions to people that have more experience than you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't know everything about technology, then ask somebody. Or even more important, hire somebody
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do something that
Take it off your
you
plate.
can't do. And so I actually hired somebody to help me out with some social media stuff.
Nice.
And so I did that, and they helped guide me. And so it's changing, and now I'm actually reaching more people. And I did this to satisfy my why. And part of my why is to inspire, educate, and empower others to find their passions.
Love that.
So that's my why. And so if their passion might be marimba or music, and I can inspire them by some of the videos that I'm doing, awesome. I'm achieving my why through that. And that's I was about to stop doing it. But I was like, you know what, maybe I can refocus what I do. So it's not, I don't have so much pressure. And so I don't have as much pressure now. If I don't post something, that's fine. I'll post a quick, story or something like that.
Yeah.
Takes zero time. And actually my kids, my offspring
Yes.
have actually been helping me.
That's cool.
Yeah. So they've given me some thoughts. And then I ask actually my students.
Yeah.
And they've given me some thoughts on what to do. And now it's pretty cool that I'm able to ask them what can I do to make it better.
Yeah.
But it really came down to why I'm still doing it is because it's serving my why.
That's amazing.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, like my example in that is like this business that I've started, Rhythmic Wavelengths, kind of to legitimize my arranging and consultation efforts, and like doing this podcast is a huge part of that. Like all the website stuff, all my brother. Like my brother he was in a class in college that they were looking at SELs and search results and all those things, and he's like, he offered to help me with all of the design of it and getting all the Google Analytics lined up, and I was like, take it and run, man. Like,
Yes.
Thank you so much for everything you've done to help me just get it off the ground. And then his wife actually is a graphic design major, and so I was like, I don't have Photoshop, I don't have all these things, like make my logo, and she came back with like 10 different options of really clear, awesome logos, and I'm like, I want that one, that one, that one, and so I think that's something that we have to learn, is to just take things off your plate and let other people who are better at it, do it, and then you get more people involved and people want to contribute.
Yep.
And like she's working on a logo just for this podcast.
Cool.
And I almost was like, hey, you know what, if she's super busy, no big deal, like I can find someone else. And she got back to me, she's like, no, I have ideas.
Nice.
I want to do this, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, okay, and she feels like she's part of it, and
That's
I
awesome.
think that's a cool thing about
Well,
all
and
the things we do.
then you don't feel that added pressure. It has to be done, but you're delegating.
Right.
Yeah.
So the koto solos that I did, I was actually going to buy Sibelius, relearn, or I used to do finale. I hadn't done it in years. I was like, I can get back into it. And then I was like, why? That's a lot of time, and
We ask ourselves the same question, and we use Sibelius every single day.
Dude. Well, I end up hiring somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
I hired somebody to engrave all of the pieces. And then I do have a graphic designer. She was a former student of mine, Adrienne Bond. Her
Yeah.
name was Adrienne Valderrama. So she was at Commerce for about 1.5 years with me. And so she's done all of my design work.
Nice.
For my CDs, for the school CDs, for my books. And so she designed my koto solo and put it all together. And it takes, oh my gosh, the pressure off of me, because now I know that she's way better at it than I am. So now I'm managing it, but I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Like what you said, it just takes so much pressure off your shoulders.
Yeah.
Yep.
One last thing.
Yep.
do you have anything else to ask Dr. Zator while we have him here before we ask my final question of him?
Well, I want to do a good idea, bad idea segment.
So this is a segment that may or may not get cut from the final production, but we did have a lot of silly ideas kind of leading up to creating this. So Shannon has got some examples of good idea, bad idea he wants to share.
So it's just a question. I have a really smart guy here. Is this a good idea or a bad idea? You can give some context, thoughts if you'd like, but at least give us a good idea, bad idea. All right. Starting 4-mallet technique in the 6th grade. Just skip the 2 mallets altogether. No one needs that. Good idea, bad idea.
Bad idea.
Why?
Because I feel like you need to, I like the foundational aspect of connecting snare drum with keyboard, which will then connect to timpani, which will connect to drum set, and that will then apply to every single thing you do in percussion.
Sweet. Let me make an edit to my next year's document. Okay, cool.
Scratch that plan.
All right, stuffing the. There's a kid on snare line. He's not playing that well. Stuffing the Tix drum with a pillow. Good idea, bad idea.
How many? I have to qualify though. How many snare drums do you have on the line?
Let's say 4.
Where are we in the year?
I mean, this kid's ticking. This kid's the tick. Everyone knows it. Everyone's very aware.
I would say good idea with a qualification of talking to the kid.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, cool. All right, teaching your own child percussion.
Oh, absolutely bad idea. Bad idea because I tried it and it's horrible.
Yeah.
So anybody, teachers, percussion teachers out there, once you have kids, what worked for me, and JJ Pipitone actually, he was teaching at Commerce and he talked to me about this. And so I took the way of kind of a little bit of JJ and then my own. When my son would ask me, hey Dad, can you listen to me play? I would ask my son the questions. Do you want me to listen as a percussion teacher or do you want me to listen as your dad?
Nice.
And most of the time he would end up saying, I want you to listen as my dad. And at that point, I would take off of the hat of like, I know everything that you're doing well, I know everything that you're doing wrong, and I'm just gonna focus on the things that you're doing well. And I would say, Dylan, that sounds amazing. I love what you're doing, and I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to see what you can continue doing. And then leave the room.
Nice.
And just leave it there.
Leave it there.
Love it. All right.
I call that the difference between listening with your ears or your heart.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
Very neat, very neat. All right, good idea, bad. Eating popcorn in bed.
Eating popcorn in bed?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a horrible idea. You're gonna get stuff all over the place, and your hands are gonna be greasy, and they're getting on the sheets. And no, that's a bad idea.
Okay, bad idea. Okay, fantastic,
Yeah.
fantastic.
For the
All right,
record.
For the record, right. Making eye contact with a mariachi band while eating dinner on the Riverwalk at TAMU-C.
Oh, it's a bad idea. Those guys are great, but as a musician, and you've heard a lot of music, so yeah, you just need some time to yourself.
You just want to eat dinner.
Yep.
Fantastic. Let's see. What's another one here? Good one here. Oh, yeah, this is a front ensemble kind of question, right? Dressing the center marimba player up in a clown outfit so the rest of the front ensemble is forced to look in.
You know, I hadn't heard of that.
Spitballing here.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great idea.
Great idea.
Yeah,
All right,
absolutely.
fantastic.
So I can't,
Regardless if the show was a circus show or not.
Yeah.
no, I can't wait to judge that group.
Right.
Like,
The kids will be looking in.
sounds great, guys. Not quite sure what the strategy is here with the clown costume, but hey, I'm just here to judge the notes. I'm just here to judge the sounds. Whatever works for y'all.
All right, last one. Here, spending extra unpaid hours creating a podcast, possibly to be viewed by dozens.
Good idea, bad idea.
An amazing idea.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you. No relation to what we're doing right now.
No, I mean, if somebody just thought about that, yeah, I mean, it's a great idea.
Awesome.
Great, all right, that's my segment.
All right, we'll have to get more. That was a great segment.
Those are
was really
good. Yeah, that's good, man.
Thank you.
I like
Good
that.
job, Shannon. All right, so just wrapping up here, we want to give you a chance. Thank you, obviously, for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
Spending, this was obviously done in one take. This is perfect, no errors, nothing happened, and it was smooth all the way through. And great to hear your insights. Do you have any upcoming projects that you're excited about, or do you want to plug anything for our viewers while you're here?
Really, I think a couple of things just kind of this summer. So at A&M Commerce, we do a percussion director symposium, and we just started a marching, like electronics symposium aspect, so one day called Power On. So that's in the middle of June, so depending on when this goes live, it might be after or before, I don't know. So, but that's something that we have going on. Just a really great way for percussion directors, maybe, or even college students that are music ed majors. They can come out and learn more from some really talented, experienced folks, whether we have percussion directors, we have headband director, we have a fine arts director coming out, we have a finance guy that's coming out.
Shout out Jimmy LeBrecq.
Yep. So they're coming out, and so really great people that are going to be at that 3-day event. And then also in July, I'm one of the 5 guest faculty artists at the International Katarzyna Marimba Academy in Poland. And it's her 10th anniversary of doing this.
Wow.
And so super honored to be going back. I did it back in 2013. I was one of the guest artists at that point. She does it like every 2 or 3 years. And so this is the 10th edition, and I'm one of the guest artists for that. So Katarzyna Michka, myself, Beverly Johnston, Pedro Carniero, and there's one other one, an individual from Mexico. So I'll teach. We have students from all over the world that will be there, and I'll teach lessons all day, every day for 10 days straight. And then I'll perform at concerts, and then attend concerts. Students will perform. I'll see the other professionals, the other faculty perform. An amazing event.
That's cool.
In Gdansk, Poland, that I'll be involved with. So really special event that I'm excited about.
Cool. What about just Texas A&M Commerce? You always recruiting students and
recruiting students. We had a great new group coming in, so amazing students that will join us. We have great undergrads, amazing. We have 3 new graduate students that are coming out to Commerce. So love seeing that our recent graduates are getting jobs. So all but one have landed a job.
Wow.
So super excited about
the one who hasn't landed a job is listening. Like,
I won't say the name, but he's close. He's really close. So, but no, I mean, we're planning. We have super excited that we are actually. I was the chair of the undergraduate curriculum committee, and we revised everything, and we now have 2 semesters of percussion methods. So all music ed majors will get to have 2 semesters of percussion methods.
wow.
And so we have Lauren Teal teaching, Tanner Leonardo, input from Jeff Osdemore for those classes, and that actually starts this next fall. So
Very cool.
Super excited for them to have that opportunity as well. So a lot of good things. We'll do, percussion ensemble stuff, and we'll continue our recording project for the solos, for steel band, for percussion ensembles. So we'll continue all that as well. So cool things on the horizon.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Dr. Zator, for being our first guest on the Dream Job podcast, and we hope to have you back. And obviously, just super thankful for all the other things you do for our program and for Forney ISD and the percussion community as a whole.
Well, thank you both, and so excited to be here. Honored to be the first guest on the podcast. I had a blast, and again, I'm proud of you two as well. Just seeing what you guys have done with the program. I think I've mentioned it before, but Riley, I remember your first year, and you were gung ho. You're like, let's do this. And I think at one point I was like, you know what? Just be patient.
Yes.
And you're patient, and now you guys, and both of you guys as a team now, PASIC concert, Midwest coming up, and just all the things that you guys are doing, and just the culture that you've created. The concerts, the Midwest and PASIC is a byproduct of the culture you've created. And I think y'all are doing such a great job with that. So I'm honored to be just even a small part of what you guys are able to do.
Thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for all of our viewers for checking out this first episode. We hope you'll continue to tune in and watch future episodes with a slew of great percussion educators coming on here to share their insights. And make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much.
See ya.
Dream on.